that's not true. Of course they're regulated. You've got an FDA. So I call up Emily Broadleaf, who's at Harvard. She runs the Food Law Policy Center there, and she's like, yeah, no, there's not any real, you have this self-determination system where the companies can decide for themselves. It's astounding. Yeah, so you do have, no one knows how many additives you have because they're also not all formally registered. So yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, and there's things that are in foods that are ultra processed that aren't even on the label, like microbial transglutaminase is basically gluten that's put in foods to make the food hold together. Gluten is like glue, and so they use it in industrial food, and they grow it in bacteria, and it's a form of gluten. And then we've seen this incredible rise in gluten sensitivity and celiac disease, potentially create leaky gut. And we know that also ultra-processed food has adverse effects on the microbiome, increases inflammation, and so forth. But that transglutaminase is something that's not on the label. Or there's emulsifiers in food that are in most of these processed foods that make the food have a good mouthfeel, and make it all sort of the right texture. And these compounds have been shown to cause leaky gut, autoimmune disease, and many other inflammatory conditions, and yet we don't regulate.
In terms of what the industry responds to all that is, they say, well, you can't prove harm. The data on emulsifiers, okay, you've got some animal experiments, you've got a bit of human data, you've got some epidemics, there's actually quite a lot of data on some of these emulsifiers now, but you haven't really proven it. But the burden of proof should not fall to independent academics to say that adding synthetic molecules to food is harmful. The burden of proof should be the other way around, and that the molecules should have to go through a proper, stringent regulatory process. But we do have a much more stringent process in Europe and the UK, but it's still not very strict. So we don't assess molecules in combination, we don't often assess the right dosage, and when it comes to food additives, we don't look at long-term effects. We don't have any assays for effects on the microbiome or obesity, for example. So I think one of the things we know is that we can make very good, safe, cheap food without all these additives, and their primary function is to save the companies money. We did a paper last year on financialization of the food industry. So instead of working with nutritionists, I worked with a lot of economists, and we just used the food industry's own financial data and compared it to their claims. Because all the big companies will say that they're mainly interested in reducing carbon emissions, cleaning up plastic, improving public health, improving the nutritional profile of the product portfolio, and so on, improving women and children's labor rights. And so you just say, okay, well, we've got all these claims, how does this stack up? When they make money, what do they spend it on? They spend it on share buybacks and dividend payouts. So even as Coca-Cola claimed, for example, to be trying to create a world without waste, that was their kind of strapline for a while, they had been the world's largest plastic polluter for several years in a row. The companies are very, very good at positioning themselves as being the solution to the problems that they've caused. And for me, that the one thing, if you give me this control of the FDA, the one thing is to go, you need to be regulated.